Hello, and welcome to today's session, an introduction to SYSPRO 8. Thank you for joining us. Before we start, I just want to make sure that you're able to hear me and see my screen. If you can, please go ahead and use the panel to raise your hand. I see a few hands raised. Great. Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and proceed. My name is Darshini Shah, and I'm the K3 SYSPRO Product Manager, and today I am delighted to have Nick Trevor, one of our leading solution consultants, join us today.
Hello, everyone.
I know that everyone's busy with trying to stay home and staying indoors, so thank you very much for joining us. The point of today's session is really to introduce someone who's not seen the latest version of SYSPRO 8 to go ahead and introduce you to it. So we'll go through and have a quick highlight of what it is that we've released in this version. To have a deeper dive into it, we will be going into another session same time next week, so you're welcome to join us on that session as well. As you know, with SYSPRO, we have a product strategy that we've adopted to try and help all of the changing market forces over the last few years. We have 4 key pillars that we've been driving towards, and what you'll see is functionality that's being released into the product, adhering and helping these key pillars. The first one is to be always on. This means that we want to be able to have accessibility anywhere, anytime, especially in times like today. We want to be able to access our business systems from anywhere we're currently living. We also want to make sure that it is available 24/7. You may be dealing with different time zones. You may be dealing with production runs that are currently in an emergency state, running 24 hours a day. You want to make sure that the business system is able to keep track and keep on top of things with you. So that's our always on pillar. Our system of engagement pillar is an acknowledgement that we want to make sure the system that we use in our businesses is as easy to use as our phones. It needs to be intuitive, it needs to be easily accessible, it needs to make sure that we're driving the behavior that we want our end users to be able to drive towards improving the businesses. Optimizing operations, this for me is bread and butter. This really is about delivering what it is that we have from a day-to-day operational standpoint, optimizing that. If there are any changes to legislation, we have maybe changes to things from a governance perspective. It's all falling into the optimized operations pillar. And as always, we want to make sure that the system of engagement, the system of business that we've chosen, is going to continue growing with us as we move forward, and it's continuing to be innovative. So let's take a look at where we're currently sitting. SYSPRO 8 actually was released back in July of 2018. It is well over a year old currently, and that is our current version. We of course have customers that are on multiple older versions as well, all the way from 7 Update 1, that's currently 5 years old, which is when it was originally released, all the way down to SYSPRO 6 Issue 9 that was retired in 2011. So well over 9 years before it was retired, and much, much older than that. As you can see, we've got a gamut of products that K3 SYSPRO currently supports, but 8 is the current release version that is actually supported by the developers themselves in South Africa. So with SYSPRO 8, which is our focus for today, we've currently got probably about 50 customers in the UK that are in various stages of using this particular version. Some still in testing mode, of course, and they're in the ways of trying to go through the upgrades, moving forward with that. But with the lifespan, what you can imagine is with each iteration of SYSPRO, we've had a number of improvements that have been added into the product. In fact, in SYSPRO 7 Update 1 alone, we had well over 1,500 changes that we made to the product. Some minor, which is perhaps an additional field size change, and some quite major, where we went ahead and introduced brand new functionality. We've continued that with SYSPRO 8, and already with SYSPRO 8, we're well over a couple hundred changes that we've made into the product in terms of improvements. With 8, it's always nice to be recognized by peers, and it's nice to see that the actual release of SYSPRO 8 was also recognized by some of the analysts. One that I want to point out is Nucleus Research. They are agnostic. They're not a marketing-driven analyst firm. They purely focus on functionality and usability. And SYSPRO is in the top 3 leader quadrant, which is really nice to be able to see. There's a few here, but it's not just about what we're doing and what we think is great. It's also nice to be able to see that there are others that see the future growth of what SYSPRO is doing. So let's dive in. What's actually new for everyone that's available in SYSPRO 8? Well, the first focus that we wanted to do was make it easier to access and use. With SYSPRO 8, what we've launched and introduced is our first web-based version of SYSPRO, the engagement of a client that's available to you in a web browser. So now you can access SYSPRO anywhere, anytime, and that's called Avanti. We've also introduced the concept of role-based dashboards. We know that people engage and use SYSPRO with different roles. They have multiple hats that they wear. And the role-based dashboards make it easier for you to access everything you need to do for that role within that dashboard itself. Think of it a little bit like the homepage that you open up first thing in the morning when you open your web browser that has access to everything that you're interested in. The news websites, perhaps currency fluctuations, maybe your favorite joke of the day. And that's kind of what the role-based dashboards are, all living within SYSPRO. Workspaces are also a similar way of doing that, but it's also driving user engagement, and they live within Avanti. I'll have Nick talk a little bit more about what those look like later on. Insights we introduced with SYSPRO 7, but we've improved them and enhanced them significantly in SYSPRO 8. And these are tiles. These allow you to drive user behavior. With 8, we've also taken some of the innovative technology with artificial intelligence and machine learning and brought that within SYSPRO itself. And as always, we're improving the ways that you can look for information within SYSPRO. So fundamentally, with the release of 8, what we wanted to do is continue down that always-on strategy, where you get to run your ERP your way on your terms. You can choose where you have it running, but also choose how to engage with it. We've got the rich UI that everyone's currently familiar with and has it available, the web interface with the introduction of Avanti, and as always, the mobile interface that we have available with Espresso continuing to be evolved and developed. Fundamentally, it's really about keeping that flexibility of deployment available for you. When we focus on insights, fundamentally, there are 2 elements that we wanted to drive with insights. We wanted them to be intuitive, and we wanted them to be based on information, analytical information. With business insights, you have the ability to have information surface up in a quick tile with a number that you're driving towards and a quick indicator as to whether you're achieving that number, how close you are to achieving that number, and whether you need to improve. With it, we also provide drill down functionality to then go ahead and allow you to start acting on what it is you need to deliver to drive that number. We've got a customer of ours that actually moved into the SYSPRO world probably about a year and a half, 2 years ago. They had a challenge with their delivery times to make sure that what they were delivering to their customer was A, correct, B, delivered on the day that it was requested. So they needed to make sure that the orders were going out on time and in full. What they did was they started delivering insight tiles that allowed them to monitor the number of dispatches that were going out every single day. With the simple act of bubbling up the number of dispatches, they were very quickly able to determine how close they were to delivering on time. They were also able to add on to that by identifying how many of those orders were being delivered in full, how many of those they were actually going ahead and fulfilling 100%, or how many had out of stock items. With that increased visibility, they were able to constantly improve and deliver to the point where currently they actually have pretty much 99% of their orders delivered at least on time. So that's the value of the business insights that we're able to go ahead and deliver. But we're adding on to the power of that with artificial intelligence. Now, it's great to talk about AI. Fundamentally, it's one of those buzzwords that's been out in the industry for quite a while. Machine learning, artificial intelligence, what does it actually mean? Well, Fundamentally, it's a very, very clever way of crunching numbers statistically to be able to identify things such as probability. If I've been able to go ahead and purchase from a supplier in the past and they've delivered within 1 or 2 days of my actual required date, what are the chances they're going to do the same in the future? So it's a little bit like using historical data to go ahead and predict what might happen in the future. If we've been in the business a long time, you know what suppliers are really good at delivering on time and which ones do you constantly have to follow up on. However, if you've got someone new in the business, they may not have that same level of insight history. But your system knows that information because you've gone ahead and raised those orders in the system itself. You've receipted them into the system and you know which ones are late, which ones are on time. And now you've got the power of having those insight tiles to be able to surface up information to add predictions based on artificial intelligence and machine learning, to be able to surface that up into SYSPRO, start making decisions based on that. Now, you may think, well, I need a data scientist for this. Is this accessible to me? What SYSPRO's actually done is gone ahead and added in pre-built insights based on typical information that we know our customers need to run into. And we keep adding more and more insights from an artificial intelligence perspective to build that on. And Nick will actually show you a little bit more of what's going to be coming on with that. So without further ado, over to you, Nick. How about you show some of the stuff that I've been talking about?
Hello everyone. So I'm going to briefly go through Avanti and what that can look like for you as a business. So as Darshini explained, Avanti is SYSPRO's web interface into the SYSPRO world. It runs very similar to the client, but it's its own UI and hosted in a browser. So you can see here, this is my home page that I've designed. It's using various amounts of widgets from my notepad to display information. I've got insights in the middle, which are built off the KPI definition, which I'll go through in a moment. I've got other more customized insights that show me commitments to spend. And I've got a program list, which I've built up myself. And then I've got my standard program list that I'm more familiar with in SYSPRO with every program that has been built for Avanti in there at the minute. Okay, so this is a workspace. Now that does not mean I can have as many workspaces as I want, and this can be by role or by operator, and then you as the administrator will have to design these. So I can flip into my default layouts, which give me just simple insights and links through into programs. Again, I can still access the main menu to get into more programs than I need. Okay, so let's have a little look at my favorites, which will jump me back to where I was before with a simple click. And from here, I can jump into an insight. So what does that look like? By clicking on, I can drill down into the detail. So my insight that I'm using here is showing my total spend or overdue spend through overdue in week 1 as a total sum, and I can jump into that to see which suppliers I am owed money to, and I've been spending quite happily within this business. I can also look at my traffic light system here. So these are built on something called KPI definitions, which I can set against any insight tile, whether it be an AI insight tile, which I'll show you in a moment, or a standard one to display a different color or icon based on what is displayed in this element here. So without further ado, I can click into this and then start looking into my overdue invoices, when they're due and how many days till they are due. Now, these could be useful to drive a story within your business. So if you're taking a statement down from your bank, which might have the references or the invoice as a reference number, you can drill into these tiles, then begin to filter. So if I start to look for a particular invoice, I can filter down a list as any list I can in standard SYSPRO. I can then use the hyperlinks to jump through into other programs. So what I'm presented here is a card. So cards are quite standard in Avanti, and there's actually a card builder, which will show you next week how to build these cards yourself. But within these, you can also get through various programs. So I've actually used the customization to add the AR payments program to this hyperlink. So I'm jumping through now to take payment for this customer. It's giving me my program, and as you'd expect, I can take my payment, give it a check number, and fill in the relevant details. I will be notified, as I would in SYSPRO, through unobtrusive messages at the right-hand side, how things are happening. These are called toast messages, and the program is quite clear and clean. I can use the drill downs to see more totals, check boxes to uncheck, and again, more hyperlinks to go through to other programs. I'll hit post, and you can see there my transaction's been posted as if I would have done that to the front end SYSPRO. Going back to the home screen, will then refresh my insights. I can now see my number has dropped. So there are insights in a nutshell. So what does, let's say, an AI insight look like? So within SYSPRO R1, there's a number of ready packaged AI samples that you can train based on your data set. I've used just the standard ones myself here. So inside purchase order query, what I've done is add these insights. So without any good information on the screen, they don't show anything really very relevant. But let's see what happens when I start drilling into a purchase order. So I'm going to use the search. Just one little brief moment on this. This search here is entirely customizable. So within Avanti, SYSPRO have introduced really rich search features that can be based on various things. So once I click onto my item, I can see my prediction is now changing values. So now I can see, based on past circumstances with this supplier, that this PO is likely to be 23 days late. So this can now start driving functions or supplier interactions as you're building things, as you're purchasing stock from your suppliers. Okay, now as Avanti, as you might choose not to use Avanti in some circumstances, that does not mean that you are restricted from insights or AI tiles. They are all available within web views within the standard SYSPRO application. So you can see I've got exactly the same insights. If I hit refresh on that, I should see that my number there will drop down to 4 from the invoice I paid before. And again, with these insights, I can drill down, use exactly the same hyperlinks. So I'm not hamstrung by using Avanti over the client. I can get access to both insights within SYSPRO and Avanti. Now, with insights, as you saw with the AI ones, they are context sensitive. So I can click into inventory query. I can enter a stock code. I can see my predictive search is starting to pop up with images, and I can tab off and it will refresh my insights dynamically based on the stock code I have passed. So from that, I can start to see how many active jobs I've got available, which again, I can customize this list to show more columns than needed. I can even look at, say, my components on an exploded out bill of materials to see what goes into this product, all within the inventory query screen and using insights. So really quite powerful stuff. Now, one little neat tip you can do now in SYSPRO 8 is for those security boffins, you can actually turn on multi-factor authentication. So against each operator, you can turn this on, and I'm going to quickly just demo that. Against my NIC user, once I tab through Avanti, and this again, multi-factor authentication is available through the client, I'll be prompted for a PIN as well as my password. Now this uses the Google Authenticator. So here I've generated a passcode, which I will normally have on a mobile device, which is, safe for or the worker's phone. And that is what I now need to type in before I'm able to log into SYSPRO. So PIN verified, and then it'll let me through. So very simple and easy to set up MFA within SYSPRO 8 and Avanti. And I think I will hand it back to you, Darshini.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks for that. One thing I should point out is Avanti is great. We've shown quite a bit of functionality that's available, and as SYSPRO 8 matures, we release more and more functionality. What you'll find is more and more of it will be released in Avanti as well. So currently, not everything that you're used to and familiar with in that rich client is available for you in Avanti, but as time goes on, all of that functionality will start becoming available and surface up in that web client as well. But it's nice to see as you can navigate through the two systems, how there is all this nice, rich, easy to use, user-friendly functionality we're adding back in. So what else do we have in here? Well, we've tried to make it even simpler to maintain and run. This is more for the administrators. This is for people that are responsible for the back office, the care and feeding of maintaining this business system. We've been requested this a long time. We wanted SYSPRO to be SQL only from a technology stack perspective. We didn't want to be able to move to have information sitting in flat files that you had to access. That makes it easier to be able to access. We have easier reporting, and it also makes it a lot faster. Now, before you come and knock on my door in another 6 months and say, but there's still some files that are available in flat files, not everything's moved to SQL. Yes, I know. We are looking at moving everything across to SQL. However, that's going to be a journey. Fundamentally, anything that requires you to restore from a backup, anything that's going to be specific to your business is going to sit in that SQL environment. Things that you can recreate relatively easily that you don't necessarily need will continue to be in the flat file. So just something to be aware of as you're moving forward as well. There will be some changes in terms of the way that the data gets stored, and it becomes easier for you to access as you move forward to this later version. The other thing that's improved is support for Office 365. We're finding more and more companies are deciding to invest in Office 365 rather than having Exchange servers sitting in-house or other mechanisms to be able to go ahead and engage for email. And it's inevitable that you want to email and communicate out of the ERP system. Things such as sending out invoices, order acknowledgements. Inevitably, you're going to be emailing that out of SYSPRO. And so we've just enhanced the way that you can do that with engagement directly with 365, the web version, rather than having to access it through an Outlook client that we might be used to. There are a significant number of improvements we've done in the installation process. In fact, that's been completely rewritten from the ground up. And what you'll also notice as you move forward to this version is how you apply updates. Rather than the monthly ports that you would be used to if you're currently sitting on SYSPRO 7, with SYSPRO 8, we actually only have a few releases every year too. And you have the ability to have various patches, service packs that get released between those updates. You choose which ones you want to implement and deploy. You do not have to deploy every single one of those as you had to with a port. So it makes it far more of a controlled environment. Could probably talk to you for about an hour in terms of the improved infrastructure, but just be aware that there are changes in the way that you would go ahead and apply changes once you move to 8. The other thing we've done is introduce some administrative dashboards, in particular for those people that are used to actually monitoring and managing the system. Again, that care and feed. And we've improved the way that you do month-end processing. So let's show you a little bit of what that means. There are two quick dashboards I want to show you. There's the introduction of a security settings dashboard. Fundamentally, it's taking all of that security, pulling it into one place so that you can see at a glance everything that you can secure from a SYSPRO standpoint. So on the left of this dashboard, what you'll notice is the fact that we have 2,700 programs in SYSPRO that you can actually choose to secure. How many of those have been set up as secure? Now, this is based on my environment, which is not very secure and rather open. But drill down, you actually have access to things such as activities, specific fields that can be limited, all the way down to even electronic signatures. Then, on the right-hand side, company level information. Do you have a password set up? How many operators have access to this company? How is your security configured? And drilling into all your groups, any roles you have configured, and operators as well. Nice one-stop shop. The next dashboard I want to talk about is the SQL Health dashboard. Because we're moving to SQL only, we thought it would improve the way that you want to see all your SQL information. Granted, you have access to the SQL Server, you can see a lot of this information, but this is purely for SYSPRO information. So if you take a look, it shows you a list of all of the SYSPRO databases for this company, details on that database, tables, columns, indices, and it highlights any sort of issues you're running into. If there's fragmentation, which there is, I've not been very good at monitoring and managing the system, you can drill in and look to see what the details are. Now, in this case, I'm looking at object dependencies. So very quick way to be able to go ahead and start monitoring the health of your SYSPRO system directly from within the environment. Now with month ends, closing them faster, there are two changes that we've made in the system itself. With each month end program, and that is usually the bane of most financial controllers' lives, how quickly can we close month end? The one thing that we've done is separate out the balance function from your month end. So what happens is when you're running your month end, the balance function was running as part of it, but generally most companies will have scheduled that and automated that overnight, which means when you come in the morning and you want to process your month end, you don't need to do that. With the task of actually separating those two functions out, we've improved that significantly. The other thing we've done is gone ahead and introduced performance improvements to that month-end processing as well as your report generation. And we've been able from larger data sets to drop that down from hours down to seconds. So be aware that as you move forward, you're actually leveraging some of the performance enhancements that are coming through with the system as well. Moving on, we've introduced functionality to help with cash control. There's some small changes we've made, simple things such as the way that you can post your general ledger to control account in detail. We've introduced various factors that help with multi-currency. The reality is that most SYSPRO customers will transact in more currencies than just the one base currency, in our case, GBP. We do have a solution for the HMRC Making Tax Digital project that kicked off in 2019. We'll talk a little bit about that. How do you improve your cash collection? Well, Dunning's an introduction into the system that we've put in with SYSPRO 8. It's a bit of a strange word, but we'll go in and talk a little bit about what that means. And finally, kind of back to the faster month ends, some things we've introduced in and around balancing that will help fundamentally with that cash control as well. So with multi-currency, there's a few changes I want to highlight today. The first thing is when you're looking at your purchase price variance, if you're buying things from other countries, you want to be able to keep track of what your expected cost for that was versus what the supplier actually charged you. Now, when you're buying it from a foreign country, you're going to probably be paying in that local currency. And so we want to be able to have that foreign exchange gain or loss separated out. And with the multi-currency enhancement that was added in, that now allows you to give you that higher traceability. There's another challenge that I know a lot of SYSPRO customers had run into, which is the multi-currency accounts when you have them within accounts receivable for your customers as well as accounts payable. You can set up your customers and suppliers in whatever currency you like, of course, and that hasn't changed. But what we have added is the ability to go ahead and receive payments from customers in any currency and to pay our suppliers in a different currency as well. So if we take a quick look at what that looks like, what you'll notice is if we go ahead and take a look at our AR payments and adjustments, we go ahead and add in details in and around the currency that we're going to go ahead and receive that payment from our customer in. And on the payment side, we also now have the ability to go ahead and pay using a different currency. So very quickly, we've now had a very quick change. So we no longer have to have two different customers for if they've got different currencies, and we can have the same supplier and pay them in multiple currencies as well. Customer collections. Now, this is fundamentally improving and making it easier for your collections department, whoever is responsible for calling up customers and keeping track of who's overdue and by how much. The Dunning system was introduced to be able to facilitate that. You have the ability to go ahead and group your customers based on how well they're doing in terms of paying you. And any ones that are overdue, you can have a scale that you ramp up or down based on the number of days that they're overdue. And when you go ahead and run, you can automate the emails that you send out to them. Now, in this case, it will collate all of the invoices for that customer that fall within that bucket, and you can add a specific note. Now, in this case, it feels like it's actually quite heavy because they're going ahead and escalating this up to the collections. What you've done, though, is automated all of this. You've gone ahead, rather than having someone go through and collect and keep track of each individual invoice and the customers that have overdue, you've put that into a group and now started to go ahead and automate the emailing and notification system of that. The geo-balancing, this is nice and rich functionality that we have available in the system. What happens with this is for each submodule, when you're processing your month end, it gives you the ability to see your subledger balance. At a glance, you'll quickly see any imbalances that exist, and you can drill into details to then have analysis based on where those imbalances are coming from. And you also have the ability, when you drill in, to post, which means you're actioning and affecting the imbalance automatically. So nice and quick. Making tax digital. HMRC introduced the requirement for companies with a threshold of £85,000 or higher to have to go ahead and keep track of all of their transactions digitally and to submit their 9-box VAT return through an API directly to HMRC. You are no longer able to go ahead and log on to the web portal and manually enter those 9-box values. K3 SYSPROs work together with SYSPRO and the Imagine team on the K3 platform itself to provide a solution that will go ahead and allow you to meet HMRC's requirements. You can easily capture transactions that were traditionally not necessarily recorded in SYSPRO. If you had a cycle to work scheme, if you had overdue debts and things like that, that may actually, the write-off of that wouldn't have been captured in SYSPRO, but added in manually before you submitted your 9-box VAT return. All of that can be captured right within SYSPRO now. You can review your transactions and you can submit them directly via an API to HMRC's portal. The solution is easily configurable, so it will actually cater for your SYSPRO setup, and it can be flexed as you grow as well. The next set of changes I want to talk to you about are sales and operation efficiency related. So within that, we've introduced functionality that will help your sales and inventory management. We've got a functionality within SYSPRO to empower your sales team, things that we have to improve your inventory management with the introduction of cycle counting. We still haven't taken away the stock take counting that you have currently available. Well, we've improved it. Picking from a warehouse management perspective, as well as just a quick tip that I want to showcase on the inventory demand review. Now, before we dive in, I'd actually like you, Nick, if you don't mind, to spend a little bit of time showcasing the SYSPRO and the inventory changes.
Absolutely. So those who aren't familiar with SYSPRO is SYSPRO's mobile solution. So this is built primarily for mobile devices and iPads and allows you to a whole range of functions, from inventory to taking on orders to querying stock items. So you can see here there are very many standard apps within SYSPRO that you get access to on its license. And I'm going to show you two of the more commonly used ones and very useful ones. So the first one we've got is the customer workbench. From here, I can pull through my multimedia to show customer logos and go through and drill into a customer. So against my customer that I have here, I can use the workbench to display a range of information. So this SYSPRO is available as an app on a phone. So you could think, for a sales rep on the road, they could use this before they go to a customer site to look at their recent orders, what invoices they have, or even pull off a statement. So it's all about building that rich from anywhere access to your ERP system. Within here, there are more things you can do, such as running a best price query. So if the customer or if the rep has a inquiry into a product, they can use the best price query to pull through the price that you would sell it at. Similarly, I can look at invoice details, then see how well behaved our customers are in terms of payments and running a statement. So really useful applications, which allow me to even go through and put a sales order on. But I'm not going to go through this way to put a sales order on. Instead, I'm going to use something called Express Cart. Now, this is a really simple and quick way to add sales orders into SYSPRO directly. So again, I'm going to use customer one. And from here, it's going to give me my product list, pulling through, again, all my multimedia. I can use the search to narrow down items, and then from here, I can quite simply fill in the quantity boxes and click add. And so that's added a sales order line to an order, which I can then view. You can see it's placed on back order. I can see the price that was applied automatically. And quite simply, I can give it a PO number and then the order. So really quick and snappy, allow me to place an order from a remote location onto SYSPRO. If I go back into Avanti, just to demonstrate a point, if I move back into my favorites, I can see my urgent dispatch is now gone orange, where previously it was green. This is because I've just placed an order on for today for that item. So you can see it's a live interaction into Avanti or into SYSPRO from Espresso itself. Okay, so that is Espresso in a nutshell. Now, I'm also going to go through the cycle counting system that Darcy spoke about briefly. So why have they introduced cycle counting? Well, one, it's a lot more time efficient. You can do cycle counts for a smaller range of items rather than a full warehouse. You don't have to do it annually. You can do it every day, every week, depending on the value of the item. It should overall give you a better insight into perpetual inventory, reducing variances, and first and foremost, it can also give you no downtime. So when you're running the system, the stock isn't placed on hold. It is tracking variances, which means you can keep transacting that stock code and selling it. So there's no business disruption while these counts are taking place. So let's have a little look at what that looks like. I'm going to browse on pre-configured cycle counts I've set up already. So I've got my A-class items, a B-class items, and I've also got just a basic one for a single stock code. So you can set these cycle counts up that fits your business best. And from here, you can also decide which classification of item you want to count. Once you've set up your cycle counts, you can then schedule them. So from here, this will create a schedule, which means they will be automatically created when that date and time is hit, which means you can put these to start every 9 AM, which means there's a count to be done for, say, 10 items within the A-class remit. Now, I'm going to manually initiate this, and then that will set it in progress. So 402 bins have been selected. So key to this is that you have to use multiple bins for cycle counting to work. Okay. Against that is now in progress. I can then begin to start capturing my counts. So you can imagine this doesn't necessarily have to be done through the SYSPRO interface. This could be done through an application like Translution to capture it. Or you can print off cards and manually key it in here. So I'm going to start capturing stock into here and hit post. So I can now see when I look at my variances, I have my 12 captured and a quantity variance 0, okay? And because I've captured 0 against this has got a minus 22 variance. So from there, I can also print my cycle count forms if I want to do a paper-based count. I can now go into my review and confirm, which will then allow me to either specify a recount, because I might decide I want to actually set the value back to 0 and get them to recount it if the variance is too high, or I can accept all lines and confirm it. Now, the confirmation process can go one of two ways for the variances. You can either post an adjustment into SYSPRO for the variance, or it can post the stock into something called lost and found. So the lost and found will allow me to review the stock afterwards and bring it back in should I find it later at a later date. So really powerful, quick, and a lot more configurable than, let's say, an annual stock take that you're used to in SYSPRO. With it, you obviously have history queries and various other cycle count queries to go back and review that data once it's happened. Okay, and that's me.
Thanks, Nick. Definitely, in terms of cycle accounting, that's part of our improved warehousing journey that we've added into SYSPRO, and we'll continue down that journey. So as you can see, Nick's just focused on the counting side of things, which is fantastic in terms of addition, because it means that you're no longer reliant on capturing your inventory just at year end or just in and around that annual stock take when everyone in the business starts slowing down. So what we're looking at here now is going to be the picking cycle. There's some improvements we've added into SYSPRO itself, and fundamentally it's about better stock visibility and improving fulfillment times. When it comes to the pick cycle, it's starting to mirror what physically happens on the actual warehouse floor, better than what SYSPRO did before. So fundamentally, when we look at a pick cycle, there's a number of different ways that we can go ahead and initiate that pick cycle. In this case, what we're looking at is nice and quick and easy directly from a sales order. What it then allows you to do is once you've started that pick cycle and added to it, you can go ahead and have a pick slip that you create for a specific operator. Think of it almost as a work to list. So you can go ahead and start identifying what it is that's going to go out. And again, remember that example we started with earlier with insights. We have a customer that has a real problem of making sure they're delivering on time and in full. They're managing that through KPIs. So now we have the ability with the pick cycle to start directing what it is that they're shipping out, how, and when. The next thing I want to talk about is the inventory demand review. It's a quick, simple program. This is by no means a replacement of MRP, and it really what it does is gives you the ability to go ahead and expand. Think of this as a one-stop shop, a centralized view of your supply and your demand. But it also gives you the ability to match your incoming supply with your demand and quickly prioritize. So if you're an operations manager and you want to go ahead and start looking at what it is that you've just had receipted back in, what sales orders you need to allocate that to. If you're using stock reservation, you can also use this particular program. So let's have a quick look at that. The review itself, like most SYSPRO programs, allows you a variety of selection criteria to allow you to filter the information. All of the supply is listed for you in the pane above. You can choose where you want to display that, of course, and it has all of your demand. Now, in this case, these are my job allocations. You can quickly action from this into what you want to do. It's a nice, rich solution that allows you to go ahead and manage your balance between supply and demand. There's some changes we've also made to help increase operational efficiency. The first thing I'm going to talk about is some changes at a high level to do with improving procurement. Job nesting sounds a little funny, but we'll spend a little bit of time explaining what exactly this is. We'll talk a little bit about manufacturing operations management, the ability to go ahead and schedule and improve production operations. And we'll wrap up by talking about some of the quality improvements we've added into the system itself. So with strategic procurement, there's actually quite a bit of work that's gone into improving SYSPRO's ability to go ahead and have procurement processes tighten up. As always, in a business, you want to manage where your purchase requests are coming through. You want to have a requisition policy that you're adhering to and be able to drive that. And there's a nice, rich requisition system that's already available within SYSPRO to allow you to drive that. The next part of it is careful vendor selection. There's a number of things that go into having your relationships with your suppliers. You want to source strategically, especially for your higher value items or your critical items when it comes to production. They're going to be based on purchasing volume. They're going to be based on location. If you've got a key critical item, you want to spread risk for your ability to get that item by having alternate suppliers. And you also want to look at implementing policies to make sure that your supplier selection process that you've spent a lot of time developing is adhered to. And you want to be able to go ahead and have auditability, traceability, accountability associated with that as well. And then finally, you want to make sure that you're improving your vendor engagement. You've put a lot of time and effort into selecting these vendors, and it is a partnership, it is a relationship. You want to make it easy to work with them, and you want to make it easier for them to work with you. You want to automate your requests and sending it off to multiple vendors when you're looking at requesting quotes back for material. And you want to have the ability for them to engage with you automatically as well. Fundamentally, reducing the overhead that you have in engaging with them while being open and honest with them. So fundamentally, what we've got is a number of different pieces of functionality we've introduced in the system, all the way from preferred vendors, sourcing policies that we've introduced in the software, the ability to request quotes, as well as a portal, a supply chain portal that we've introduced with the introduction of 8. We're going to spend a lot more time going into some of this functionality that came out in the life of 8 in next week's session. We'll also spend another session specifically focusing on the value of procurement and the changes that we have in there. But I just wanted to highlight the fact that there are a number of changes that we've introduced in the system that will help that particular element of your supply chain. I promised to explain job nesting. Now, fundamentally, this functionality that's been introduced into SYSPRO is for environments and production environments where you have perhaps a company where you've got maybe multiple jobs that are using the same raw material. They've got the same components. You want to be able to process those components very quickly in single setup. So if you've got a CNC machine that's responsible like this for cutting different size and style of parts out, you want to be able to go ahead and capture the costs for that and easily go ahead and drive that. From a SYSPRO standpoint, we've introduced job nesting to allow you to optimize your raw material usage, optimize the use of your resources, and reduce your operation costs. And it's the ability to track that by taking that same material operations, tying them together easily, and then separating them back into their parent parts back in. Now, it's important to note that with the job nesting functionality, we won't take care of the optimization in terms of doing the calculations and the mental arithmetic needed for different shapes and sizes. CNC machines often have functionality pre-built into the systems for it. We just need to extend SYSPRO to be able to go ahead and cater for it as well from an operational standpoint. That's the functionality that we've introduced with the job nesting. The next thing I want to talk to you about is manufacturing operations management. It's a nice, fancy, long word. We call it SYSPRO MOM colloquially internally. But fundamentally, what this new module that we have introduced allows you to do is it allows you to go ahead and schedule. Now, you do that today. You may have a system that takes care of it. You may have invested in a lot of time and effort into a spreadsheet. You may have, I've seen this definitely in Canada, is whiteboards that take care of your production plan for the last week, the upcoming week, the upcoming month, basically your firm horizon, when you're going to be making what you're going to be making, how much of it you're going to be making, who you're going to be making it for. With SYSPRO MOM, what we've introduced is the automated ability to keep that information, take all your jobs from SYSPRO and visually lay them out on a graphical board to allow you to optimally schedule. Once you've scheduled and your production planner is happy with that, you want to make sure that everyone in the business knows what that looks like so that they can plan and work to it. This is where you publish it. Now that you've published it, MOM also gives you the ability to start capturing and collecting information from the shop floor directly as you have people working through that production line throughout all your different operations, as well as the ability to go ahead and start capturing information from how long it takes a machine to go ahead and work through that operation. So as you're collecting this information based on that schedule you spent all that time and effort building, you have the ability to track and analyze. And the benefit, of course, of analyzing is now the ability for you to improve. And that's the true nature of most manufacturing organizations, is that continuous improvement. And the ability to visually see that schedule is incredibly powerful, especially if you're looking at shifting production. To be able to quickly see what you currently have commitments for and schedule around that. Do you have capacity to go ahead and take on more work? What happens if you've got to slow down? What impact will that have? How many gaps will you have in your schedule? So all of a sudden, this visibility gives you some rich information to be able to start making sensible decisions on. With manufacturing operations management, there are also a rich set of dashboards that are available. They allow you to track your employees' performance, your machine performance, as well as your efficiency. And these are pre-built and available for you out of the box. You can see at a glance what sorts of information you can access, how often this particular employee is available, what their performance rating is, how are they doing over a period of time. May want to look at my factory performance overall. In terms of all of the hours that I had, how many did I operate? How many had I scheduled? How much loss do I have because I couldn't plan a shift around it? Did I have planned downtime? And now you can start using this to improve your production efficiency. I'm actually going to hand over to Nick at this point to talk a little bit about the quality improvements that we have specifically in SYSPRO around product recall. Over to you, Nick.
Okay, so as Darshni has mentioned, SYSPRO are trying to implement some quality elements into SYSPRO itself, rather than relying on other systems. So they've introduced the product recall module. So this is basically a lot traceability query, but for serial items, lot items, and standard stock items to help you trace items throughout the supply chain. So in the case that you do get a recall, you can immediately act and recall the products from the affected customers and alert the affected suppliers. So I'm actually going to start this little story in my Browse for Lots program. So SYSPRO in SYSPRO 8 have introduced the concept of additional lot numbers. So this is really quite handy. So against a lot, I can actually specify as many additional lot numbers as I require. So what's an additional lot number? This could be the supplier's lot number. It could be the supplier's pallet number. It could be a range of things that will help you trace this lot back to its original source, and what will help you help your supplier basically quarantine the stock that might have been impacted. So here I'm going to just fill in my additional lot number. It could be anything. And then save. Okay. Now it takes, go on.
Can I capture the additional lot number when I'm receiving stock in? If I've got a supplier lot number I want to track, will the additional lot number allow me to capture that as well?
Absolutely. So that's the purpose of basically giving you the functionality to capture that extra information against the lot for better traceability.
Excellent, thanks.
No worries. So now I've got my additional lot number. I'm going to have a little look what my selection review looked like. Okay, so rather than use my standard lot, I'm actually going to search based on an additional lot number instead. So browsing on that, I can see the one I've just added. Okay, I'm going to hit start review and I'll kind of give you a bit of an explanation of what's happening now. So based on that lot, say if it was recalled or the customer had a complaint, and we'll talk about the customer complaint system a bit later or next week. We can then query this lot number, and that's going to do me an up, down, and a cross type query for any items that have potentially been impacted by this lot number. So from here, I can see various stock items and serial items that are brought into the query. I can look at affected purchase orders and affected jobs to see where it came from. Okay, let's just expand on that a little bit. So we've got 4 items within this list. Say if I were to issue this lot to a different stock item, the components of that job would also bring through into this list view, because potentially there's cross-contamination that you need to address. So I'm actually going to go and do a quarantine and see what that looks like. So we're going to do a mock recall. So you'd give it its own reference. And the purpose of doing a mock recall is for audit reasons, to prove that you as a company can actually perform a recall within a certain time frame. So again, I'm going to go back through my selections. I'm going to do exactly what I did before and bring in my lot number. Based on the information supplied here, I'm going to decide to only include this item in my recall because I know these part numbers wouldn't have been impacted by the issue that was expressed within the customer complaint here. So once I've done that, I can apply and close, and it brings it into my recall. So now this is fully queryable within various query programs that show me what actions are happening within this element. So from here, I can select it. I can give it particularly different actions. So I can release it once I'm happy that the stock code is suitable. I can set it to inspect and then capture information against that, which will go against the history of the recall, or decide to scrap it, which means it will be adjusted out of the system. Within a mock recall, I'm actually not performing any fundamental actions to this lot number. I am just doing it as evidence that I can. If I had to do a full recall within the process, I'd actually be seeing that the lot number goes on hold, and any actions thereafter would be adjusting or getting rid of the stock. So it will completely close down that lot number for sale, for movements, and for purchasing or anything like that to help with the recall as it takes place. Okay, I think I'm going to file that back to you, Darshni.
Thanks, Nick. So that's a really quick high-level overview of things you can do with a recall. Now, Nick went through a mock recall, but he also talked to you about the fact that you can have an actual recall should you be unfortunate enough to have to go through that exercise. The product itself allows you to do a quarantine where you can start going ahead and holding things for inspection, further review, internal processes. Once you've gone ahead and done that, you can scrap items if you so choose. We've got our selections review that Nick went ahead and showcased, where it gives you the ability now to identify other affected parts. You can go ahead and put items on hold while you're going ahead and doing your investigation. And you can do that automatically through the recall program, which makes it far more effective rather than having to do that individually. You have the quarantine, where you set the recall to complete. And of course, for audit purposes, you need the ability to identify what it is that you've gone through. And there's a query that shows you all the detail and history of the actions you've taken through the recall, be it a mock recall or an actual recall. So this gives you a sense of some of the changes that we've introduced in SYSPRO 8. By no means is this a complete list, and by no means is this comprehensive in terms of all of the areas affected from a business process standpoint. Fundamentally, what we're looking at, of course, is what are the reasons why you might want to look to go to 8. It's got to be important to you and your business. You've got to see something that's compelling, that will give you value. It's either going to drive performance, it's going to help you increase your productivity or improve your quality. What is it that you need to do from a compliance standpoint? You may have some technological infrastructure changes that you need to do. You want to improve your collaboration across the organization. You may want to reduce cost. There are a number of reasons why you may want to stay up to date. Fundamentally, it's going to depend on you and your business. Hopefully, you've seen something today that you think you may want to learn a little bit more about. There are a number of different areas you can go to help yourself. Take a look on the info zone. There's the learning channel. As always, call your account manager if you want to know anything more about things that you've seen today. Join us next week. We're going to be having a session where we dive deeper into some of the newer functionality introduced in the life of 8 as well. Thank you very much for joining us today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your week. Take care.
Thank you all.